Hello, everyone. Welcome to the seventh episode of ICC Interesting Conversation Corner. Today we have on Matt Conroy running in the Illinois 5th Congressional District for House of Representatives, correct?
Yes, thank you so much for having me on, Alexandra. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And so let's just hop right into the questions I've got down. I shortened it a little bit instead of 10 questions to seven, so hopefully we keep the
Sure.
time frame a little
Yeah.
bit easier. First question. Why is the Democratic Party letting itself be outflanked by folks like Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens on the issue of genocide in Gaza, a dangerous thing?
Why is it a dangerous thing? Well, let me start off by saying I think it's happening because they're cowards when it comes to it. Like, that's the easiest way to describe it. They refuse to stand up and speak out against a genocide and speak up for what is right, stopping sales of weapons to Israel and being on the right side of history, which they are currently not because they refuse to upset their donor base when an overwhelming majority of the Democratic Party is wants to stop sending weapons to Israel. They recognize it as a genocide, positions that I hold. Now, this is a very dangerous thing because for someone like you or someone like me who is politically informed and politically involved, and we understand what is going on, and we understand that Tucker Carlson, while he's pretty anti-Semitic, and he holds some, he says some things that are has said a lot of things and holds incredibly views that are widely considered to be racist. Um, that doesn't mean he doesn't always, a broken clock is right twice a day. And if you're someone who's politically uninformed or uninvolved and you see those clips come across your timeline, again, like there are times when he makes interesting points when he's interviewing people, that clip with Mike Huckabee. And if you aren't involved and you aren't educated, you're going to go down that rabbit hole. It's how the right wing media ecosystem has gotten so big. Look, I am not at all a fan of Joe Rogan. I'm not a fan at all of Charlie Kirk or any of those right wing influencers. But I have to give the right wing credit where credit's due. They are so much better at their media infrastructure and the way that they are able to get out these clips that make it seem like they actually know what they're talking about. That's it. That's how they pull in the young voters that Democrats are losing, and that's why it's a really, really bad thing.
Absolutely, yeah. And in particular, one of the things I like to say about Tucker is that he's very dangerous because he's such a good interviewer, but he's
Yeah,
also like deeply, innately, and very
yeah,
racist.
yeah, and like he is like, in my opinion, he actually probably is the most dangerous one because he's so smart. He is like, to his credit, he is a good journalist. Like, he's had a very long career of it, and yes, he is incredibly racist. But when you look at how he knows how to get to where he wants to go with a conversation without seeming combative. He is very smart and very intelligent that he knows the roadmap of every single direction this conversation can go, and nothing's going to throw him for a loop. Whereas if you're dealing with a Nick Fuentes or a Joe Rogan or something like that, it's like these people aren't educated. They're just they're clickbaity, or they're just, in Joe Rogan's case, they're non-confrontational and they're not going to push you on an issue and they're just going to move on if they get uncomfortable.
Absolutely. Oh gosh, so many stories of other people running into problems with Joe Rogan. If there's one specific electoral reform that you think needs to be accomplished first, what would it be?
Hmm. Electoral reform. So I want to make sure I understand. You're referring to like voting and things like that.
Yeah, so this could include like ranked choice voting, equal ballot access, making voting day a national holiday, ending partisan gerrymandering, on Capitol
Sure.
House, anything like that.
So we do need full scale reform when it does come to voting and how we vote in this country. We haven't, or a large portion of the country hasn't reformed or evolved with the times. I think 1A and 1B, in my opinion, is ranked choice voting. And I think publicly financed elections. When you look at the way that New York City does its races, particularly like its local municipality, Zohran Mamdani, for example, that is a great example of someone who has the true voice and enthusiasm of the people. Whereas if he ran in Chicago or ran in another state that didn't have ranked choice voting and didn't have publicly financed elections, they would have ended up with Andrew Cuomo, which is a disaster. So I would say those two. Now, when it comes to election day as a national holiday. I'm not necessarily against it, but that doesn't solve the problem for people voting, because a lot of people who would still have to work on election day are hourly workers, are people who work in retail, fast food, hotels, like you name it. Like these are the people who would still be unable to vote. So I think we need to expand ballot access. I think we need automatic voter registration, which is why I actually support nonpartisan registration. I don't think you should force someone to pick and choose who they're working with. I think we should have open primaries across the board. If you do that and then you combine it with hopefully when Democrats take back power, they make investments in education, particularly educating people on civics, voting, responsibilities that goes into it. That is how you have an informed population who can be engaged in their civic duty of voting or running for office or showing up at community meetings. Whereas now it's, that's not how it's set up, and it's designed to be that way. And that's a problem, and that has to change.
Mm-hmm. And shout out to all the political science majors out there. I'm a former one myself. What's one vote by your opponent you wish more of your constituents knew about?
Yeah, he actually voted to restrict abortion access in December. He supported HR 7006, the NDAA, and one of the provisions is it restricts funding for abortion access. It also sends $3.3 billion of additional aid to Israel. And there's a lot of really, really bad things with the bill, but he voted for it because it had funding for Ukraine. The craziest part is several hundred Democrats voted for it. So every single Democrat who voted for it, who claims to be pro-choice, who claims to support women's reproductive rights, bullshit. Seriously. Like, I am so sick and tired of actions. And this goes back to our first question. If you are politically uninformed and uninvolved, you hear what they say, and if you take them at their word, you're going to be like, oh, okay, he's got it on his website, he says these things. But you have to take the time ahead of elections and look at it. So that is the one vote that people need to know more about, that he says he's pro-choice, but he'll sacrifice it if it comes to funding for Ukraine. And that is a big problem.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. I'm in the 10th district, and Brad Statter, literally the same thing, and even more insidiously to get under my skin. I feel like he posted that he got endorsed by Planned Parenthood, and I'm just like, are they doing their research? I think they need to be more informed and stuff, because, and especially in that particular race, like in yours, it's a very strict, it's not like the 9th to where everybody and their mama's running and there's 17 candidates. Correct. It's very strict binary. You have the old establishment past or an actual progressive future. Like, it's very
correct
dry in that sense.
Yeah. And look, that's where I encourage people to get more involved. Like, if you see that someone is in this case, we'll use your example of Brad Schneider, like voting for it and Planned Parenthood supported him or endorsed him. Like, that is something where, I would hope that more of our elected officials would call out, be like, hey, like, he's not pro-choice. He voted against it. Like, I don't care what he says and what he tries to spin it as. That is not pro-choice. Anytime you vote to restrict abortion access or restrict access to any funds to be used for services or whatever it is, you are limiting a woman's right to choose, and you are not pro-choice. And honestly, I think the Democratic Party needs to grow a spine and start calling out its members for it. Like, that is one of the things. So you have to be able to speak out and speak truth, even when it's uncomfortable, and I think there's too many people who are just afraid for their own political future, and that has to end.
Absolutely. Amen. Amen to all of that. Favorite moment of the campaign so far?
Honestly, I can't point to a specific one. I really like talking to people, and I really like getting out and speaking with voters. Like, every candidate will admit the worst is call time. The worst is that, like, when you're not face to face with people, it's really tough. And some of my prior experience when I did right out of college, I did some door-to-door sales. I worked as a financial advisor for a couple of years. Like, these are very client and people focused roles. And these were things that I absolutely loved about it. So if you're an elected official and you're not face to face in your district multiple times a week when you can be, look, I understand if you're in DC, I get that. But that's one of the big complaints. They don't hear them. They don't see them. So at the very least, I'm going out and talking to them about what I want to solve. I'm asking them about their issues. We're having conversations. And even with people even with people who are Republican voters, the fact when you go out and you see them and you talk to them, they realize, wow, I have more in common with Matt than I do with a career politician, regardless of whether or not that career politician is a Republican or a Democrat. And I say, look, we may differ on how we're going to approach immigration or how you want me to approach the economy. I'm going to listen to you, and I'm going to do what I think is best based on the advice that I get from the people in this district.
Mm-hmm. As I like to say, it's up first down, not left first right.
Yeah, exactly.
What races other than your own in Illinois are you keeping an eye on? I know there's a lot.
My state senator, my state senator race, my buddy Nick Unijewski is running against Sarah Feigenholz, and I think Nick represents the perfect. Nick versus Sarah represents the perfect example of true progress, or like a vision for the future versus kind of the status quo. Look, like Sarah Feigenholz has been a champion of women's rights. Like, there are issues that I agree with her on, but she said some things that are incredibly Islamophobic and racist in the past. And that is just unacceptable from elected officials. And at some point, you just become complacent or out of touch with the system. And the number one example I would say is, I saw an ad of hers on, I think it was Instagram or YouTube, like 2 nights ago. And she talked about pushing back against Trump and pushing back against ICE. And she's taking donations from PACs that donate to Republicans, donate to Donald Trump. And it's like, that is the number one example of just pay attention and not like looking at what's important. Because if you can't, and the same goes for Mike Quigley, because he takes donations from corporate PACs, he takes donations from lobbyists, special interest groups, AIPAC, all that donate to Donald Trump, January 6th insurrectionists. You can't be a opponent of the Republican Party and stop fascism when you're funded by the companies who want fascism to continue. Mm-hmm. And the same goes for a lot of our state races, a lot of our local races. There's also an open primary for my state house seat. Margaret Croak vacated it so she could run for state comptroller. And it's a pretty, there's Lindsay, I always screw up her last name, is running. She's the best. She's such a sweetheart. Kareem Lakhani, I believe is his last name, Mac Laboon, and Paul Kendrick. So there's like 4 out there candidates, people who are in the community. And like, these are things, it's like, okay, this is going to have a direct impact me, things that I need to pay attention to. So I encourage everybody to also pay attention to their down ballot races, because they're just as important.
Amen to that. Yeah. If your campaign had a theme song, what would it be?
Ooh. I my wife is going to kill me, but
those are my favorite answers.
Yeah. So it's funny. I joke with her when we go to Costco, like we were driving to Costco one time, and Fat, Juicy, and Wet came on. And I was like, all right, I guess I'm ready. I made the joke. I was like, I guess I'm ready for Costco. So, it's kind of our it's like our little joke where like when we're going to an event together or we're going that's, so I'm going to go with that. I'm sticking with that.
That's probably my favorite answer so far. And last but not least, question I like to ask all my guests, as I mentioned before, I used to be in the gaming industry. So, favorite video game of all time?
Okay. Most of my gaming experience centers around college. So, like, I lived in an apartment with multiple guys. We actually would have just like day long, when we were on break or something, like day long tournaments for FIFA, NHL, and Tiger Woods. I never really got into like Call of Duty or anything like that. And when it comes to arcade games, I would have to say Mortal Kombat when you're at an actual arcade. So yeah, I'm going to say that those are probably my favorites. And then my most nostalgic one is easily when I got my first gaming system was Nintendo 64 growing up. I think that's common for a lot of millennials and people my age. So yeah, Nintendo 64. So it was Mario Kart, it was GoldenEye, and it was Ken Griffey Jr. Baseball were the 3 that I'm like, yep, that's what kind of got me into video games.
And brief Nintendo 64 story, actually, before we go. For folks out there, and most Pokemon fans don't even know this, I was playing Pokemon Stadium on the Nintendo 64 with my friends at the time. And it was a whole ego thing. We were kids at the time. I liked Charizard, he liked
Yeah.
Blastoise. And even though we had a team of 6 different Pokemon and there's typings and all that, it was about which one was the best, apparently. And I had a Charizard and an Onyx. He had 3 Pokemon that were all super effective against both. The Charizard took out 2 of them, got the Blastoise to half health before it died. I'm like, yo, at this point, if the Onyx just self destructs, this is a
Yeah.
win for me. And I clicked that self destruct button, it missed.
Oh.
I didn't know self destruct could even miss.
I never played the Pokemon games, but I actually did collect the cards when I was a kid. That was a big part of. We went through phases. We did some of my friends. We did yo-yos. We did sports cards. We did Pokemon. We were big into wrestling. We would pretend like we were like Stone Cold and The Rock, and yeah, we were typical '90s kids.
Yeah, for sure. Oh gosh. One last story actually before we go. I know most trans people are kind of uncomfortable talking about their dead name, but my dead name was inspired by Stone Cold.
Okay. Oh wow.
They have the Stone Cold like theme song as their like called voicemail or
Oh,
like
yeah.
everything. Oh goodness.
I will say when that glass shattered on the his intro music, you're like, oh yeah.
That's what's up. Yep.
Still to this day, I get like a little goosebumps. It's just like, like childhood memories and stuff like that.
Yeah, 100%. Well, thank you so much for coming on. This has been just, oh man, this was fucking awesome. Hell yeah.
Anytime, Alexandria. Thank you so much for your support. And I know you got a couple big races up in your neck of woods, so make sure you pay attention to your races as well.
Oh, you best believe I will. All right. Take care, everyone.
Awesome.